Thank you for the kind words. Thank you for having me. It's really a pleasure to be able to have this speech and bring evidence in a time when you all, as an ecosystem already in this room, because I understand you have students, you have professors, you have investors, so it's already an ecosystem in this room thinking how to make Greece relevant and how to bring investment and great ideas to patients, which is really what we care, being able to provide solution at the same time to provide growth platform for the Greek ecosystem. What I will try to do today is to bring you a number of evidence that will help you think about not just the scientific and clinical value of innovation, but what does it take to make an innovative treatment, a solution for patient to become something that is finally available to patient and is finally suitable for a country or a global clinical validation process first, and then actual adoption. And yesterday I had the pleasure to pass by and to listen already to some panel conversation, and I believe the evidence I will bring to you will probably bring back some of the elements that I thought it was very critical to have in this audience, because they will be the building pillar to whatever you are thinking when you are considering how to make Greek relevant in this space and how to connect the dots in this conversation. So first of all, I don't need to repeat because you read this every morning, every evening, when you open a newspaper, a digital newspaper. We live in very special times. And in this special time, even mature market becomes unstable. We have a very growing population. In mature market, it's a very elderly population. Reality is that we know that elderly people really consume lots of assets and resources that healthcare system owns, which means innovation is very much available and required, but very hard to be financed and sustained. GDP is not really in a booming time across all countries, and there are a number of challenges that you need to consider, even if you are in the biotech space, even if you have the best solution for a given niche value place for your patient. You need to consider that the ecosystem is where you need to get into to become successful and to get support, to get the funding, and finally, again, to get your solution up to the patient. Reality is that, again, we have rising costs of the healthcare. We have issue on hospital capacity and workforce crisis. And again, molecule is not the only element of a successful case. And I think yesterday this has been mentioned. Challenges, again, you read all the time, it's about where the private equity will get funding, will get the IPO, will be able to come back on innovation in a time where we know the exit, it's a bit of risk because of the chances of having the right price to the right target patient population in ecosystem that are supporting. Multiple innovations are coming, and this is good news, right? We have new model of action. We have new role and model of administration. This is often a great news for patient and caregiver. We see more and more of AI being in the game at the different stages of the clinical innovation, from really identifying the right target, to identify the right hospital and target population, to simulate what would be the right sequencing of the application of a given new model of action that you may have identified. And the areas of value promise continue being numerous, right? We go from the usual suspect, so oncology and hematology, but more and more we see multiple myeloma, obesity. It's an area where more and more consideration are made. CNS, finally, after several attempts, is advancement, and obviously there is a huge need. And again, CNS, after a number of years, also on the medtech side, is becoming an area of growing attention because there is also a big connection with the population we have, so elderly, with comorbidity, with sometimes obesity, which means a number of other cardiometabolic bad conditions that should be treated. But as I said, and this is also reflected on the curve of the clinical study, you can see here that after the COVID times, we are back on growth. And we are back on growth across all different phases of a clinical studies, from phase 1 up to phase 3. And again, running clinical studies nowadays with around new model of action often brings lots of complexity per se. It's not just about an active ingredient. It's much more around the logistics sometimes when we talk about cell and gene. It's about how an hospital or an entire ecosystem can be able to really handle the innovation. And when you think what will make your journey a successful journey, my recommendation, and this is what I say often and discuss with my clients, think these things early enough. And early enough is sometimes even 5 to 8 years earlier, because it's really about what's the right sequencing of the final application of your clinical idea, and how this can be proved in a context that is still pretty busy in terms of possible application. And when a competitive condition is busy, you really need to think, what's my value story? And what's the value story I'm going to talk to my stakeholder? And the stakeholders are not just other principal investigators and other scientists. It's really about, the person that will be responsible for the access, the regulatory bodies. And the fact government, they don't have much money left, means that you really need to prove with evidence that the value is there and there will be return. There will be a return because of you will manage a burden of disease, there will be social impact, there will be a truly answer to an unmet need that is there and recognized as an unmet need. It does not mean that you only see the value, that the whole ecosystem needs to see the value. And this is the most relevant evidence you need to keep in mind. The amount of GDP spent on healthcare that in certain countries is now around above 10%, is becoming something that is questioned. In Italy, I come from Italy and Greece, we are not that lucky, we are half of this, but countries that had the luxury to invest lots of innovation are now questioning this. UK, Germany, even countries where insurance company finally, honestly, take most of the burden, and even countries like Germany where innovation was given relatively for granted, and you had the renegotiation after 1 year, once you get really the real test on what value have been brought. Now they start questioning, do I really can afford this level of innovation? Or should I better take care of the basic, which is, my mass population, the queuing in front of the hospital because I don't have enough resources available in the system. So when you think about the clinical value, also think what's will be the overall value I'm bringing to the society, why this will become something nobody will question, and I will bring the evidence in the journey to be able to prove along the different gates, phase 1, 2, 3, up to the regulatory approval, what is needed to go through a conversation that is becoming much challenging across the board. And again, my experience often, these are thinking that happens too late in the journey. And then lots of investment get diluted because of the last mile of the innovation journey that is getting closer to the approval and the commercialization. So think in advance, get support. And again, what we see, and again, I don't want to bring only bad news, but just consciousness, is that the launch moment of a drug is becoming more and more short in terms of getting the return of the big investment, in terms of time span. So before it was the first year very critical to get a good return and position of drug. Now it's becoming 6 months. And these 6 months is much more challenging because I still have lots of regulatory bodies watching out, and all the access gates becoming much more difficult to go through. So you need to be really prepared with your ecosystem on this part of the activities. And what we have listed here are the most successful launches that happened recently. All of them were really spotted on in terms of clinical value delivered for a given specific target population, which was making the case for a price that was really rewarding the investment with conditional approval and mechanisms that were fit for the purpose. Again, this is not something that necessary when you start at a biotech company you think, but this is becoming more and more crucial. Regulation in Europe, and I think this is mentioned yesterday, is something we excel at, and not always is a good thing. We have lots of burden that will come, so if we saw AI is more and more used to make the journey as efficient as possible, also retrieving evidence and data on innovation, well, now there is higher bars around cybersecurity, AI use and that, so that's also something that Europe needs to consider. So it's not only Greece that is thinking what is the ecosystem and the mechanisms that are required to become attractive, an attractive place for innovation. Now that US is a bit shaking, Europe is making this very same thinking. And again, I think yesterday was the suggestion, make the ties. The ties in terms of mentorship, but the ties also in terms of understanding of regulatory channels that can help accelerating innovation. And have this conversation early on. I think one of the cases of European country that has done this very nicely is Spain. I think it was not, honestly, a country where you would think to go for a clinical trial application. It has been increasingly taking a very prominent place because the country has been taking very seriously clinical application as an area of investment to benefit university, to benefit the biotech ecosystem, have some private equity working pretty nicely, the model, hospitals, and all this has been working, making Spain catching up versus the Nordic countries. So this is another element obviously very crucial. Yesterday was mentioned China is becoming a key player in the big global game. Is doing it fast as part of their long-term range plan with a strong determination how to do this. In the picture you see the rows where China is actually catching up and even surpassing what we are doing from a regulatory point of view. They have been very determined setting the role, like South Korea did a few years earlier. It's about life science, it's about biotech. That's where I want to excel. And when we think about China, and this is something we need to repeat, it's not only a Me Too thing. They are really very strong in top of the notch, strong clinical innovation. And now with AI and plus medtech, this is really something that is worth looking at. I think yesterday the advice you received was, don't look just to the US and the part of the world. Look on the other side to try to understand where the ties should be built, because China has identified even district where the way hospitals operate, the way the overall ecosystem, in the data generation ecosystem, it's really set and thought to help then the industrial application, the biotech application. So that's something definitely to watch out, and this is the result. Look at here. 2013, China was counting not even 5% of the clinical trial start. This is the shocking evidence we are even bringing to European level as an organization. We are now into almost 30%. Clinical trial start. Very efficient. Often run by Chinese biotech in Chinese hospitals. So this is something very interesting that prove that an ecosystem determined can really get results. Obviously, here we have a big scale. We have a government that is willing to make the investment, but China is a place to watch out. What are the factors that are really critical identifying a country where a biotech company, maybe not a Greek biotech company, but another biotech company, or a big pharma company will look at deciding which country I want to make the clinical studies. And again, I think this is something the country need to consider, is not cost, which means it's a great opportunity to get money in and investment in. The element is not about I go where is cheapest, I go when I'm sure I will get the site started up, I will get the first patient in the right timing, I will keep the patient in the study, I will get the right follow-up, and ideally I will also have the access because my evidence journey is not finished in phase 2. My evidence journey go more and more in phase 3, phase 4. I have sequencing, so I want to make sure that this is happening. So this is something that is essential to be understood in an ecosystem. It's about not only a biotech and not only private equity, it's really hospitals and clinical ecosystem that is able to compete, which means digitalized, with interoperable platform that can help to generate real-world evidence data, which is cheaper and faster to generate data, and able to really go to the level of personalized medicine, which means does include genomics data information together with administrative data, together clinical data. So it's really something that is essential. And again, I come back yesterday, there was one element of the conversation around Israeli. I will show you what Israeli has been able to achieve and do in this regard. Again, patient enrollment is essential, and it's what the ecosystem needs to think to become welcoming for investment by biotech, not necessarily Greek biotech, but it could be US biotech, it could be Northern Europe biotech coming here and bringing principal investigator, bringing mentors and peers, which always help. Real-world evidence, I was saying, is becoming more and more crucial because having real-world evidence data in clinical practice make the case stronger for the access because it's about real practice, and it's faster because if it's there structure, it can also help, doing the feasibility, ahead of the clinical study and checking all elements and conditions. Again, this does not come for free. This does require very determined investment on elements that are vital to make the ecosystem work. So you need to have quality data. You need to have interoperable system. You need to interconnect from genomic lab to actual standard of care. You need to have enable AI because more and more patient identification does need to come from there. It cannot be just done by physician that remember by heart who could be the patient that could be fit because the number of inclusion-exclusion criteria has been going to the roof. So it needs some help there. So I don't need to say that once you've done this, exactly, you get lots of benefit also for the healthcare system overall, because then you transfer what you learn during the clinical investigation phase, and then you transfer on the way physicians naturally treat their patient. Lab system and even machine will be upgraded, and the analysis done is the multiplier is times 3. Any dollar that comes to a country that is used for clinical study generate $3 of value for the country itself. So it's really something that creates huge synergies, even if require determined investment. UK has been catching up, with Brexit, you had to figure out what they want to do next, and they have done a big investment trying to establish a nationwide unified interoperable data model with anonymized and pseudonymized data. Their intention is to become a hub for research for biotech and big pharma that want to understand what's the right target, what's the mechanism of action, how can I simulate. So they've done a big investment, 7 years, we know because we are partially involved, trying to get this data lake available. I try to be fast, but just to give you a sense. This is Clalit, the case of Israel, another case where you have one ecosystem of data that go from lab to genomics to regular standard of care, everything organized with high quality that they use from, natural application for the population, up to biotech application because of the characteristic also the population in Israel. There are ideal place where you want to run assessment on rare disease. But again, we are talking about 5 million insurance patients with data available, record, 1,000 clinics, hospital, genomics, everything in one place, which speed up the way you want to do, and obviously very strong AI computing capabilities with which add. And this is what they do. We really work a lot with them, enrolling patients in specifically in the rare place, because it's very difficult to find a comparable asset elsewhere. And then Spain, this is what I told you. Maybe it's a more Mediterranean type of country, but still a country that decided not to lose time and invest to have these data lake. They use European funding for this. They have been able to put together university hospital, 7 university hospitals, 3 biomedical centers, 4 biobanks. They are now in phase of testing, so they have been designing and trying to assess how this ecosystem, and you see here, university hospital, biobanks, researchers, all working with the same ambition of creating the best condition to help enable research in an effective way. And again, this is transferring from biotech and research to actual care. And in case we have one of the data lake that we are investing time and energy, in this case is Scotland, that is using pharmacogenomic application also for checking and improving the application on antibiotic resistant for actual prescription on the population. So again, the ecosystem is vital because the challenge here is not an intellectual challenge, it's not a clinical challenge. It's really an ecosystem request of connecting the asset and to make the value story very strong, the evidence that can be used to reinforce this very strong, not only for principal investigator, but also for regulatory bodies and everybody that stands on the protocols management. And finally, access into patient needs to be very carefully thought to on the target population you want to address to go to. And then the sequence is probably the last element you need to watch out. I use, unfortunately, most of my time, but I hope I provided important evidence for your thinking. We have time for a couple of questions. So
thank you very much.
You're welcome for questions.
Okay, I will exercise my authority as a chair, and I will assign the first question to myself.
Please.
So yesterday we had the Prime Minister of Greece here announcing that in the next few years they will have a new Ministry of Science. If he would hire you as the director of the clinical science in Greece, what would you change in Greece? The first 2 or 3 things that you would have top on your list to change in Greece in order to promote the creation of the ecosystem that you nicely described?
That's a difficult question, and the risk is that you are very dumb in answers. So I would probably simply say that it would be an honor to stay available.
We will inform the Prime Minister.
Absolutely. And honestly, as a company, we do this exercise. And I would say the very first thing I would start doing is, first of all, creating a very structured journey for the clinical infrastructure. So what I was saying, clinical university lab and genomics information to be properly operated in a way that it can really welcome principal investigators running their initiative. I will probably find a strong connection with research institution, and I think the fact that the Greek, there are very strong Greek leaders overseas, that's something that can be formally structured as a connection. John Hopkins and I think other organizations have done something similar. So I would definitely create the infrastructure, creating the funding for the infrastructure as a country, because you need to be very visible, as Israel and other countries have done. I will create the ties between established research hub versus emerging research hub, and definitely will continue working on, accessing the innovation. I think the initiative done of creating fund for innovation is also something that is very visible, because it's also about the message you convey, and the connection with European Commission is the last, just to try to continue pushing our European counterparts to stay aligned. It's not just about defending an IP, it's to creating the ecosystem that help the innovation. I think there is still some work we need to do at a European level. So.
Too much work.
Yeah.
Questions from the audience?
Excellent talk. I'm going to follow up with Costa's question. First, I'm going to say that I will strongly advise against being hired from the Greek government, because you will lose all of the power you have through IQVIA in that case. So, and expanding the question, does IQVIA have any collaborations with Greece similar to what you are doing in Israel or in Spain? And if you don't, what will it take for IQVIA to initiate such projects in Greece?
Our collaboration comes in two ways. First of all, we are player in the ecosystem, so we are very willing to attend the session like this or other more formal session where we share what we know. What are the trends? I think this is creating a common alignment on what are the urgency and the priorities. So this is the first element, absolutely, this is what we tend to do, and we start putting things in order to be more frequently available for this type of conversation. Second, what we do is we are part of tenders. We do participate in European tenders. All the projects that were mentioned here, they were not assigned to IQVIA because of IQVIA, but we had strong technical qualification, and our project won against others that were presented. So the usual approach is to stay available with our capabilities. We tend to work with partners. In the case of UK's, but also in Spain, we always work with, also in Italy. I work in consortia and I bring the best of breed. Sometimes it's the IQVIA piece, sometimes it's the incumbent, sometimes it's somebody else. I think it's really about recognizing as IQVIA, from my point of view, that I am a strong player, you said, but I don't win if the ecosystem does not win. So for me, the issue is not get a little bit more of a market share. For me, it's really about make the market grow, because that's what will make innovation run, and to create more opportunities for my clients. And honestly, right now, my clients are both hospitals as well as life science, and we all work for the patient. So I think that's the twofold answer. Like, support the culture and the understanding what is required, and then be available and stay connected whenever there is a tender, so we can bring our qualification.
Okay, since we have to move to the next session, please give another round of applause to Ms. Antonella Levante for accepting to serve in the Greek government first, and for the great talk. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.